I am your host, Tony Fry. This is episode 220, where we'll be discussing the song Rats by the Kinks. If you're joining us live, be sure to say hello in the chat and chime in with your thoughts as we go. This is our second live recording session, and if you missed yesterday's, it is archived on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel, and audio of all these shows will be added to our podcast feed a week following the live recording. Okay, so today, like I said, we're talking about the song Rats by the Kinks. This song was released November 20th, 1970 as the B-side to the Ape Man single, and is also the 10th song on the album Lola vs. Power Man and the Money Go Round, which was released November 27th, 1970. And the song was written by Dave Davies and is about as different as you can get from his other compositional credit on this album, Strangers. This is an all-out rocker from start to finish and features some outstanding performances from every member of the band. If you listen to all the band's albums in order, this is actually the last Dave composition you're going to hear until You Don't Know My Name from Everybody's in Showbiz. Since Dave isn't given any vinyl space once the Kinks enter into their rock opera period, it gets very sparse for the Dave Davies compositions. Kind of interesting, Dave doesn't mention this song in his first autobiography. I checked today, it's not in the index, it's not anywhere where he's actually talking about making the Lola album. Maybe there's more comments to come in his forthcoming book that I think comes out in April, but I don't know for sure. But he did talk about it a bit while promoting the 50th anniversary of Lola. And he mentioned in an interview that the song is about his feelings about the music industry. And he says it's a nightmarish scenario, really, being in the music business. I've never really felt at home, but once you get on stage and connect, you're home. In fact, the lyrics are pretty scathing if you dig just below the surface past the rat metaphor. If they die, there's more bread for me, is one line that really jumps out if you apply it to record executives and agents and managers and people like that. Musically, this song is kind of funny because it bears a striking resemblance to yesterday's episode about Magical Mystery Tour. All right. So the song is in E, and it opens on the E chord and then jumps to a G major chord, which we discussed yesterday has no business being in the key of E. In fact, it's not really even conveniently borrowed from any of the other scales associated with E. So we're not getting a 5 of 5 or a 5 or 4 or anything like that like we're used to. It is the 3 chord in E Dorian, which is a mode. But E Dorian would, if we were in that tonality, the first chord would be E minor, and it's not. It's E major. So in that, we're not in E Dorian. So yesterday I said that Magical Mystery Tour's use of that G chord was basically, it was the tonic of the relative minor to the parallel minor. All right, I'll explain it real quick. But if you are kind of confused, I went in a little bit more detail in yesterday's episode, which, like I said, is up on the YouTube. So we're in E minor or major. The parallel minor is E minor because they share the same name, E. And then the relative minor to E minor is G major. I'm sorry, the relative major to E minor is G because they share the same key signature. So relatives share the same key signature, parallels share the same first names. Okay? So there's where your G comes from. It is the relative minor to the parallel minor of E major. So we're going to E to G to A, right? It's the exact same chords we talked about in Magical Mystery Tour yesterday, right? Roll up to G, roll up for the mystery tour. Same exact chords. So it's kind of funny that I just happened to pick these back to back today, or this week. But that's how it goes sometimes. So these, so I'm basically going to say the same thing. It's the same analysis I gave yesterday. And these are just examples of instances where musical analysis gets super complicated. But at the end of the day, it sounds good, so who cares? So like if I was actually analyzing this on paper, I would put a little flat sign and then an uppercase Roman numeral 3. And that would tell me that it's the 3 chord, which in this case would be G minor. And then the uppercase 3 tells me it's major, so that would tell me it's G sharp major. And then the flat sign in front would mean lowered a half step to G major. So that's how I would notate it, but that doesn't really tell us anything about where the key is coming from, where these chords are coming from. But, you know, again, it doesn't really matter. This is all just trivia. I really only bring up that chord sequence because it's the exact same one we discussed yesterday, even in the same key. The rest of the song is really absent of any stable tonality. And really, these 3 chords with that G major chord, it's kind of absent of any stable tonality also, which isn't unusual. All but one of the chords in this song are major chords. And most of them are naturals. Right? And there's no key. We have C, C sharp, D, E, G, and A, all major. So 1 sharp. All of them are all natural major keys. There's no key where those all exist. And there's an F sharp minor in there somewhere. That's the only minor key, or chord. But unlike I Am the Walrus, which also uses exclusively major chords, that one covered all of them. That went A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That covered every chord, every major chord that you have. On the natural side, it got covered. This one doesn't hit all the chords of the diatonic scale. So there's not much to analyze. A lot of the riff is based on chord playing, and so we've got these movements that you wouldn't necessarily do, other than the fact that you're building this riff around them. I do want to highlight a couple things real quick though, and the first thing is the amazing bass playing by John Dalton. When you listen to the beginning of the song, he comes in halfway through the introductory riff, which is cool and unusual of itself. And then when the verse kicks in, his bass line sort of mimics the rhythm of the guitar riff with a lot of upbeat playing. Kind of has a Motown feel until a minute 13. And there he busts into this walking bass line out of nowhere and completely takes off with the track. As if it weren't driving enough, Dalton kicks it into high gear at that point. And it's really outstanding. It's really, really good bass playing. And this is the kind of bass playing that when I'm playing in a band, I like playing with guys that play like this. It's really fantastic. Then, as always, I want to point out Mick Avery's drumming on this track. He is, as I've said 100 times in this series so far, a criminally underrated drummer. And his grooves and fills here are absolutely perfect. You know, if you listen to what he's doing with the left hand on the snare, and he has a jazz technique almost, particularly with his left hand. And you didn't hear a ton of rock drummers of his era really making the two influences work as well as he did. You know, the Stones have that jazz, you know, he could play jazz, but he didn't really incorporate it into their work quite the way that Mick Avery does. Right? So if you listen to his left hand, he's the interplay between the snare and the hi-hat, instead of just getting you're getting like right. You're getting a lot of subdivision in the left hand, and it's very subtle. It's ghosted notes. But when you combine that with the fills that he does, which are really, you know, there are moments when he is very restrained and just playing it straight ahead, and then there are moments where all of a sudden he turns into Keith Moon. And this one's got all those moments. And then, of course, John Gosling, who we've talked about before, is new to the band at this point, adding in some filthy organ over all this chaos of the bass and the drums and the guitars. He just adds these chords. I mean, he ends the song on a different chord than the rest of the band. And it works. It's an extension. But nobody else is playing that extension. So he's kind of sticking out on this chord while everybody else is ending, you know, on the tonic. He's playing this extension, and it just adds so much tension and depth to this song. The work he does on keyboards on this track is really pretty cool. Kind of gives you a vibe of like Steppenwolf, but better. No offense to Steppenwolf, but it kind of has that tone. All of that plus some stunning guitar work. Dave is basically soloing through. If you're listening on headphones, it's panned all the way over. He's basically soloing through the whole song, and then the guitar riffs, the rhythm guitar, all that is really solid, and it ends up being a real treat on the album. And coming after the ballad, A Long Way From Home, and preceding this pop pastiche of Ape Man, it kind of helps anchor side 2 of the album, right? I don't think there are any throwaway songs on this album, and even though I'm not the hugest Ape Man fan, I mean, it's still a catchy tune and everything, but I think without having Rats on side 2, the second side would start to feel like they were just throwing stuff at the wall. You've got a ballad, you've got this quasi island sounding song, and where they're just I'm an ape man, I'm an ape man. I mean, it starts to get a little hokey, but you've got this song, and then you've got Power Man, and that really kind of keeps side 2 cohesive with side 1. And I mean, all this, we don't listen to it on sides if we're listening on Spotify or on our CD collection, so that's all a bit irrelevant at this point. But, it still adds to the flow of the album. And I think just like we had a palate cleanser between rockers on side 1, now we have a rock palate cleanser against kind of the softer stuff on this album. And it works effectively. We don't have anyone in the chat today, so we're not going to chat with anybody there. So I just want to remind you all, if you are able, we're going to do different times every night until we kind of come up with a time that we can get the most people here. And I know that because none of these episodes have aired on the podcast feed, a lot of you don't even know that we're doing it like this yet. So as the weeks go on, make sure you're following Hero Habit, facebook.com/Hero Habit, and that you can join the Kinks and Beatles Facebook group once you're there. But if you follow Hero Habit, you'll get alerts for all the times that we're scheduling these live broadcasts. And you can participate. You can jump in and you can, just say hello or correct me on something that you disagree with or share an insight to a song that you might have. I'm really hoping that this becomes something that you guys will join me in and we can have some fun with it. Okay, so that's going to be it for us today. As always, thanks for watching or listening, and be sure to track us down on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. We're on all of it now, to stay up to date with this series as well as all the other cool content we're posting. And if you'd like to contact me, you can leave me a voicemail, 925-494-1739, or email me at kinksandbeats@herohabit.com. And of course, you can find me on all these social media platforms as well. Thanks for checking out this episode, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.